Every once in a while, in every football club, a player comes along whose eye for the ball and instinct for the game is just a touch above the rest. Something special happens, an air of expectation mingles amongst the crowd. Anticipation breeds excitement each time the player gets the ball. And when the goals keep coming in a never-ending stream, an awe settles in the realisation that the story of a legend is unfolding. This is a story of a player whose love for the game has made him a hero in the eyes of thousands. A player whose name is respected by his fellow professionals. A player whose name is John Robertson. John Grant Robertson was born in Edinburgh on the 2nd of October 1964. He was the third son in a large family, where football was, not surprisingly, often a topic of conversation. And for those that showed the interest, there was no shortage of encouragement. It wasn't long before scoring goals was to become a habit, and by the time young John attended Parsons Green Primary School, people were taking notice. From there, he went to Edina and Portobello High School.
First time I saw John Robertson was at his primary school, playing for Parsons Green. The reason we went down there was that we'd heard so much about the wee boy that we, were very excited about him coming to Portobello High School. We watched him and he scored about 4 goals, if I remember rightly. It's such a long time ago. John's build when he first came from primary to secondary school was like you'd imagine it. He was very small, maybe a wee bit of puppy fat, but he was a very strong wee boy. Basically, the ideal build for a football player. He was actually known as Pop Robertson as against Pop Robson, a great striker down in England at the time, who kept scoring goals, and John just kept popping him in. Obviously, that's why he got this nickname. And when he began playing in the secondary school, although he's playing against boys that were much bigger than him a lot of the time, he still scored so many goals in first-year football, it was frightening.
One man who has played at all competitive levels with John is current Hearts teammate Gary Mackay.
Well, I was fortunate enough to play with John at Edinburgh Primary Schools when we were both, well actually I was 11 years of age and John was 10. He represented Edinburgh 2 years consecutively, and you could see that John had a knack for scoring goals at an early age, and that has been proved all through his juvenile career then as a professional.
Me and Gary have come up together through schools. It starts way back when myself and another ex-Hearts player, David Bowman, went to Parsons Green, and we had a very successful team, but we always had to play against Gary's team at Ball Green Primary. And over the years, progressing through to Tynecastle School and Portobello, we bumped into Gary's team. It was always Portobello against Tynecastle, and I think over the years we came out even. The one trophy that Gary's team did win that we never got was the actual Scottish Cup for all schools, and Gary was instrumental in those days. We played all 3 of us together with another few professional players in the Salveson team that went on to do so many records, and eventually into Hearts.
Basically, he developed very quickly as a player because he liked the game so much, wanted to talk about it. It was difficult to coach him because he was so knowledgeable about the game anyway, but he soon became a well-known Edinburgh star, basically, of schoolboy football. One of the major influences on John's career was Chris Robertson, his big brother, who was a great football player himself, signed for Rangers early doors. At one stage in his career, when John was coming up to choosing professionalism, was playing for Hearts, obviously. And I think that had a big influence on the team that John went to. There were, well, every top club in Britain was after John at the time when he was in 3rd and 4th year. Nottingham Forest, Clough was on the phone to me, Liverpool were on the phone, Spurs, Manchester United, Arsenal in particular. Another nice wee story about that. After John had decided to sign for Hearts, the Arsenal scout offered a lot of money if John would change his mind and go to Arsenal, but John had made up his mind. I think, coming back to what I was saying about Chris, that Chris had been really unlucky with his career. I think in a lot of ways John wanted to first of all emulate him and become a professional football player. But I think he'd intended to try and become a great player, like I think his brother should have been. But as I say, with unfortunate injuries, didn't become. So I think, yeah, a big effect on John's career.
Well, obviously we were very much influenced by our father. He used to play amateur football, and our older brother George played football. It was a bit difficult because he had three boys, and obviously you couldn't go to 3 games at the same time. But he would travel, you know, over the country to watch us if he could.
It was very much a thing. There had been so many kids, there had been 3 boys and the 4 sisters, that everybody, there was that many of us to keep an eye on us, that, you know, football was really to get away from the family in a degree, that you got out and you're away playing with your own friends and your own age group. And you came back and everybody had their own vacation in life. Obviously, their sisters went into banking, a lot of them. Big brother George followed my father into the brewery trade. But I wanted to be like Chris. You know, Chris was the brother immediately above me, and he was the one, as I said, signed for Rangers and was getting the headlines in the local papers as a schoolboy soccer player. And I wanted to do it, but I was never ever said by my father or Chris or George, you are going to be a football player, you're going to be nothing else. But yeah, they encouraged me. They took me out the back and kicked absolute lumps at me for a while to get used to playing against bigger boys. And in fact, when we used to play in the 20-a-side, 25-a-side games on a Sunday, my big brother Chris wouldn't let me play because he felt I was too small and too fragile at playing it. But eventually, as big brothers do, they relented, and as I say, I think Chris is as proud of me as anybody today.
We were playing against Dalkey St David's at Holyrood, or Durringston Plainfields as it's called, up the road, in a cup semi-final. And the referee hadn't turned up, and unfortunately I had to take the mantle of being referee, which is not a very pleasant task. And in the first 15 minutes, the captain of my side had created a terrible tackle and I had to send them off. And basically the team were struggling, and it looked like, you know, they were going to lose this important game for them. And at half-time I still felt I couldn't go and coach the side because I was refereeing. So they were 2-1 down, struggling. But John took over. He scored 5 goals in the second half, ran riot. The best thing about it was that he pulled the ball down in the halfway line, or just inside his own half, from a goalkeeper kick-out, and flipped it up in the air first time and hit it in the volley. And the whole of Durringston Plainfields went silent. Every player stopped. I stopped. I looked at this ball flying towards the goals. And the goalkeeper, who hadn't known anything that was going on, suddenly turned round when he heard that there was nobody shouting and things. And suddenly saw this ball hurtling towards him and scrambled back, but no chance. The ball took one bounce on the middle of the line and rocketed into the roof of the net. And everybody said afterwards that, you know, Pelly was a great player and things, but we thought about John that day.
The goal scoring continued to come naturally, and his ability was fully recognised in 1980 when honours arrived in the form of Scottish schoolboy caps.
John's international career blossomed in third year, and we're all really delighted about it. The thing was that we didn't get to hear about it first hand because he'd been told already, but he kept it quiet in case he wasn't picked. And then when the word came through to the school that he was to be picked, everybody was delighted about it. It was read out by assembly, headmaster, all the people in the school got to know about it. We're all very proud of it.
Floated high once more towards Coyne, the big number 5 would come up. And Scotland now with McStay, a chance and a goal! 1-1. Paul McStay making his record 16th.
I think one of the most memorable moments I've ever played for Scotland actually goes way back to 1980, when I was fortunate enough to play in probably one of the greatest televised matches that most people have ever seen, in the famous 5-4 Scottish schoolboys win against English schoolboys. It was a fantastic day. I mean, even from day one, you're going to play at Wembley. It was a blazing hot day. I always remember the English schools chairman would come in and say, look lads, if you're going to beat us today, can you make sure it's 5-4 and give the crowd a great game? And no doubt was to know how prophetic those words were going to be in the end.
Here's Dick. Hey, going past his man nicely, and lovely bit of style there by Dick. Played back there. Oh, and a chance, and McStay has made it 2-2. Dick again. And cut out by Robertson now, after the England captain almost gave it away. Managed to retrieve it. Slugden with the shot, and Scotland are in the lead. Well, young Douglas McPhail had a chance to get that away for England, but the moment he failed to do it, Scotland were always in with a menacing chance there. England actually should have cleared it down. They had the ball, they played a silly little short ball. It was cut out, there was a little bit of a scramble there. Robertson was on the ground, could stay on the tackle, and then Sludden, the centre forward, turned well there and played it across the goalkeeper into the far corner. Phillips coming in, trying to play the ball in for Dick, onto his left foot, and they've got another one! 4-2 to Scotland, and again England
cracking match. Paul McStay scored a couple of great goals for us. John Sludden, Ali Dick, and who can forget the famous Paul Rydick goal when he cut in and crashed it in for 30 yards as part of his hat-trick.
Jones to right out.
Oh, a tremendous goal! That's his hat-trick, and what a way to get it!
It was just one of these great matches, and it was a pity on the day that somebody had to lose, but obviously from a Scottish point of view we were delighted. But even this day people still talk about that game. Every schoolboy international that comes up with Scotland England, they always remember the 1980 match.
The game is going on, and it's with Sludden, and it's another goal!
So Scotland have restored their 2-goal lead, and Sludden gets his second goal, and Scotland's fifth.
Finally made up my mind after a few trials down in England with various teams that I was going to stay in Scotland, and it came down to a straight choice between Hibs and Hearts. And because I think I'd been training at Easter Road for about 3 nights a week for about 3 or 4 years, I'd actually plumped to sign for Hibs, and I was taken into the boardroom to sign, met the famous Mr. Tom Hart at the time, and we went over terms with the manager, and asked for my father had died a few weeks beforehand, and I'd asked for time to go home and talk it over with my big brother Chris. But Tom Hart thought, you know, with him being at Rangers, if I talked over him, that he would try and poach me to go to Rangers. And after the now infamous words that if I didn't sign in there, I would never wear a Hibs jersey again. And so really that made up the decision. I had to go home, told Chris what was said, and told him that I was going to go and sign for Hearts the following evening, which I duly did.
Without doubt, John's father would have been immensely proud of his achievement, and especially delighted with his choice of club, having been a Hearts supporter all his life.
And my dad was a real Hearts man. And it was always his dream to see one of his sons playing for Hearts, and he never saw it, never saw my brother playing either. And I think he'd have been the proudest man in Edinburgh that night, because I come on as a sub with 17 minutes to go, and my brother was already playing for Hearts for the 2 years played. So it was a tremendous night. The actual first goal for the club, I was actually an apprentice that day. I was cleaning all the boots and putting the stuff out. And there was a great story, because I'd done all the kit and went to see the manager and says, you know, is that all you need? He says, yeah, you can go away and get your dinner. I went up, I had a fish supper up the road, came back down and was told that Wally Pettigrew had failed the fitness test and I was on the bench. Went on and scored, so it just shows you don't always have to eat the fitness foods to be all right.
During his formative years with Hearts, there were many who said that much of his fast developing ability was inbred and that he was born to score goals. But the Hearts team boasted several well-experienced players who had been instrumental in John's career. One of them was Jimmy Bone.
Very, very early on, there was this little lad who was expected to be the other striker beside me. And the first thing, you know, standing there and realising that he was a centre-forward, looking round, I said, well, I don't know how we're going to do this. It was a wee bit a little enlarged. And at that particular time, the manager had said that what he wanted was me to supply the brains and the experience, and for John to do all the donkey work. But John, being the type of lad that he is, in a very, very short period of time, Jimmy was still the legs, and John was the one that was providing the wee bit extra special thing.
Touch on from Bone, finds Johnston. Clark wants it in the middle with John Robertson. And a perfect finish makes it 2 apiece. He really is so accomplished in that situation with right foot or left.
You know, the type of lad John was, he just accepted the fact that I'd played around a wee bit and was very experienced. And so he accepted it and took it on board immediately. And I used to spend quite a lot of time talking to him about different situations.
I had to offer Jimmy immediately, and it was his gruff manner, and he barked at me all the plays, but I was in awe of the guy, because there's a 35-year-old running about like a 25-year-old, still upsetting defences, still scoring goals, and he was still prepared to pass on everything he knew to me. And it was great to be with, not just in the training ground, but he also made you relax away from the game as well. And he was the highlight of all the players when we finally got off the ground staff was being able to sit in a tiny little tea room and listen to the stories of the Jimmy Bones and Willie Johnsons and
Stuart McLaren's this world, little stories and all the funny quirks that they went through their career.
Eddie McDonald going straight to the goal line, right on the near post. It's in, turned in by Robertson, and the goal which Hearts have threatened so long has arrived at long last.
Because he was so young and we expected so much from him, 1 minute we'd be patting him in the back and the next minute we'd be kicking him up the backside. But in these early days it was definitely more of a kick up the backside. It happens all the time. I mean, you see, you're getting a pat on the back for scoring 2 goals 1 minute, you miss an easy chance and you're getting booted up the behind the next. But yeah, as I say, Jimmy played in Alan McDonald era, and that was the things you learn about from these kind of guys. And Alan McDonald wanted the older professionals to look after the kids, bring them up and teach them very, very good habits.
Him and Bud and Jimmy Bowen, they all used to get together, you know, the Bowmans and the Mackays, and they used to have a good bit of banter before training and things like that. And I think they learned a lot from that. You know, like Jimmy would talk to Robbo, and at the end of the day, Robbo was a good listener. He always was. And it's important when you've got somebody with the vast experience that Jimmy Bowen had to listen to. And as I say, he was a good listener.
John has played under several different managers at Hearts, all of whom have had an important influence on his career.
Bobby Mulcair only really worked under him in a brief time, but he was the one who originally signed me, brought me into the Hearts first team within his first season, and he was quite prepared to give youth its fling. But he was a very hard work manager who worked a lot on the youngsters' fitness and tried to get into the good habits that you could bring right through into the first team. Going on there, he came to Alan McDonald, who is ultimately probably one of the biggest influential managers I have played under, because he was the one that really took the grip of me by the scruff of the neck and went through everything. You know, he was really into fitness, and he said that it took him to 26, 27 to really get the physical shape of things that he wanted, and he wanted our lads to have it by 21. He felt if he'd had that, then it made him a far better player. And he developed, along with George McNeil and Bert Logan, the sprint coaches, a completely new training routine that was based on athletic sprinting, the speed ball the boxers use, pull-ups, press-ups, dips, a sort of upper body strength where you could not run all day but be very fit and also be able to play the ball, because he knew that Hearts were never going to be able to afford the most expensive players in the land, and they would have to make do with whoever they could buy. So he bought frugally and bought wisely.
We bought Sandy Jardine, then came Sandy Clark, who'd done extremely well for Robbo as well. So he's learnt, had a lot of good experienced players around about him at one time or other. And as I say, if he never had the quality he's got, you know, because he was a good listener and he's picked it up. But he's an exceptional player.
It could be a very interesting break. There's no onside. This could show it. Robertson must score. He must, yes. Oh. And he's not praying. That does it. His second, Hearts third. 21 minutes into the second half.
The clearance, no, missed by Monroe. Back to Robertson, the chance for Sandy Clark. Will it go for the third? Yes!
Another great influence in the early 80s for John was striker Sandy Clark, now a coach with Hearts.
I signed for Hearts 1984. John would be just a kid really, in the early 20s. And at that time I didn't know much about him. I knew he was a good player, but never played with him. I knew he could score goals, but really didn't know much about him. But the early impressions of me was, I remember my debut for Hearts well. It was October '84, and we played Morton at Capelon. And our front three that day were Jimmy Bowen, myself, and John Robertson. Jimmy was over 30, I was approaching 30, and John's a young lad in the team. So the three of us are playing away during the game, but it's Jimmy Bowen and I was doing all the work. There wasn't any question about that. And to me, it sums up John Robertson a little bit that he wasn't in the game. Honestly, he was hardly in the game, but we're 2-1 down at one point. And there was a loose ball in the box, and he was onto it and hit a volley into the back of the net from absolutely nothing. And right early on, the first game that I played, that summed up John Robertson to me. A guy who would get you goals from absolutely nothing, but outside the box didn't he contribute just as much as maybe he could have done. But he's certainly improving a bit more as he goes on.
Put on by Bone. Sullivan was there, it was a hand. Undoubtedly a hand used by Alan Mackin. No complaint from the big centre half. And a perfect chance for Hearts to get back in level terms. Black against McDermott. Brilliantly taken by Black. Hearts are back in terms. 1 minute into the second half. Touch on from Bone, finds Johnston. Clark wants it in the middle. Here's John Robertson. And a perfect finish makes it 2 apiece. He really is so accomplished in that situation with right foot or left. So, 19 minutes into the second half. Oh, the Hearts go back in terms. Created on the right. Ball played across into the box for Robertson. He made his own position going towards the left. And that drilled left foot shot left McDermott helpless. There goes Bone. Mackin in trouble. And Sandy Clark celebrates his first match in Hearts colours. So Hearts for the first time in the match go in front. Bone made a good run to take the pass from Jordan, cut the ball back across. Mackin appeared to have the thing under control, but it broke awkwardly off him, and Clark rifled home the shot.
I knew that if I could get on the end the kick-outs for the goalkeeper or long balls from our defence, I knew that more often than not John would be on the end of it, and he knew where I was going to put the ball as well. And the two of us thought and spoke a lot about it and worked hard at it, and it worked out very profitable for the two of us and for Hearts Football Club.
In the 1983-84 season, John had netted 15 league goals for Hearts. His performances were, by then, being admired by everyone in the game, and out of respect for his ability, achievement and attitude, he was acclaimed Young Player of the Year.
There was me just arriving. This lad's got the reputation of being a great goal scorer, and I'd just come in, as I say, and this young kid, and they were telling me he'd scored all these goals. You know, it was disbelief. And the thing about him is that he doesn't always blast it in. He'll chip them in, he'll bend them in, he dinks them in, he'll head them in. It doesn't matter which way. He always finds the route to goal.
Good cross, up goes McDonald, there's Robertson! Played away from him by Patterson. Gardner's in trouble. A chance now for Hearts. Scrambled into the net, off the head of Sandy Clark. John Robertson driving forward, played away by Patterson. Gardner going off a volley of his own out of his goal. Clark got it in. There was John Robertson with the neatest of touches. The chance on the line, the ball is in, and John Robertson has equalised. And Hearts shock Aberdeen once again.
He'll score with his head, he'll score with his outside the box with right or left foot, inside the box, inside, outside of the foot. He could pass the ball in the back of the net, or he can hammer it in.
Well, Hearts players aggrieved about the goal being allowed to stand in view of that offside claim against Joe Miller. There's Scott Crabb heading back. And immediate retaliation from John Robertson. Hearts fans grow wild as Robertson equalises within a minute. Over 10 minutes remaining. Tries to get into the viciously.
I think everybody's got to look at their own strengths, and you look at certain players who maybe have a lot of pace and who just run into holes. There's players who are very good in the air, but for me, being a small player without being blessed as the quickest of players, I had to rely on sharpness. So I was always basically thinking where the ball was going to land, or there's a lot of guesswork in it. There's a lot of natural instinct. A lot of people say, other people say it's a gift. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I just make my mind up and I think where I'm going to go and run it in the hole, and most importantly of all, try and lose the defender. And on your day, if your luck's in, the ball will go into the hole, you've lost the defender and it's a goal. There's other times you run in, lose the defender and the ball goes completely the other direction. So yeah, I do think a lot about the game. I think a lot about it after it. But there is a small thing about that, but I think it's down to basic instinct, that you believe that you're going to go in the box and you believe the ball's going to go there, and ultimately at the end of the day you believe you're going to stick it in the back of the net.
By all accounts, in 1985-86, Hearts had an excellent season, finishing runners-up in the Scottish Cup final and only missing the league championship by goal difference. It was magnificent goals like this that so nearly brought a major trophy to Tynecastle.
Robertson with a shot. Oh, what a goal! Oh, a brilliant goal!
Away from the hurly-burly life of a soccer star, behind the public figure and hero on the field, there's another side to John Robertson. On the 14th of October 1986, John was married to Tracy Young at St Michael's Parish Church in Stapleford.
Well, I met Tracy, the boys used to go for their lunches to the local corner shop, which was frequented as well by most of the young ladies, should I say, of the neighbouring Tynecastle Secondary School. And first met Tracy in there, then started going to the discos and bumped into her again, and from there the romance, as they say, blossomed.
We had to get married on a Tuesday. We couldn't have a honeymoon, and he was back training on the Wednesday morning. He trained actually in the morning of our wedding, and the players had to watch what they were drinking, be home quite sharp. I mean, if you're going to be a footballer's wife, you have to be behind them 100%, move if they have to move, be there. I've learnt a few hard lessons through it, and you've got to learn how to bite your tongue sometimes, but you have to be there for them and just go with them 100%.
During 1987-88, John had notched up 34 goals, his best seasonal total yet. It wasn't really surprising, therefore, that interest in him from other football clubs became intense.
It just came at a time where I felt that, like any other player does, that he feels maybe worth a wee bit more money, and that's the truth of the matter. It all comes down to that. And Hearts offered me a one-year deal, and with a promise that if I done the business, as it was said, that they would offer me a better deal at the end of it. I scored 31 goals that season. They offered me a new deal, but the new deal they offered was exactly the same as the one I just signed. So, as most players do, ask for a little bit more. The club weren't willing to give me it, and we moved on.
John, by his own standards, didn't have a great deal of success in Newcastle, and it was fairly imminent, certainly in my opinion, that he was ready to move. I think there was a strong possibility that he would come back to Tynecastle, given the chance.
I started reasonably well in the pre-season games, scored about 4 in 8 games for him, and then I got a niggling knock in the first couple of games, and people thought, you know, it's just a groin strain or whatever, and then it developed into a muscle injury. I was never really 100% fit, so with losing my sharpness, they took me out the forward line and played me in a wide row in the midfield, which really, as everybody will tell you, didn't suit my game. And as I say, I wasn't training, and the manager who bought me and another 3 players was sacked. They brought a new manager in who was told that the only money he was going to get to spend was the money that he brought from sales of players. And there was a few teams in Scotland wanting to buy me, and he decided I could go.
I rang Gordon McCaig, who was then the chairman. I said, look, if you ever get fed up with this guy, give me a phone and we'll think about bringing him back. So the team went to Yugoslavia for the 3rd round in the UEFA Cup a few years ago, and Gordon McCaig rang me at 6:15. By then, Smith had just been appointed at Newcastle. And he said, you've got 10 minutes to decide whether you want John Robertson. It'll cost you £750,000. We won't take any more or anything less than that. So we had a family conference, got the tea on. My son, who was then 10, my daughter, who was 12, my wife and I. And I said, do you want to buy John Robertson back? They said, can you afford not to buy him back? So I picked up the phone to Gordon McCaig and said, send him up the road. And I met him an hour and a half later, put him in a room with his agent, and we did a deal, and he's been here ever since.
There's Robertson. There's a great chance. Oh, it's just off the line. McCarthy. That's right beyond McCarthy now. John Robertson. Does he have the control? That looks like a penalty kick. And this. Great tackle by Rogan as Cahoon went forward. And it's a penalty to Hart. Hardly any protest from a single Celtic player about this. And a valuable kick to be taken by John Robertson. Prodigal return with an important task. That's it, the equaliser. Simply done by Robertson. Very big heart support here this afternoon, having something at long last to cheer about in the 28th minute of the first half. Warner was fidgeting on his line. I think maybe to some extent might have distracted Robertson. And Robertson thought the best way to deal with that was punching straight at him, which is what he did to great effect.
I think the most important decision you've got to do when you take a penalty is make your mind up which corner you're going to put it in, or whether you're going to put it down the middle these days, because, as I say, the goalkeepers dive pretty well. And don't change your mind, because the moment you decide to change your mind in the run-up, it's fatal. I can recall a couple of penalties that I've actually missed by changing my mind at the last minute and try to put another corner and the goalkeeper saved it comfortably. So I think the key to it is don't change your mind and make sure you have a nice clean strike. If you had a 12-yard shot against a goalkeeper, out with it being a penalty, you'd fancy your chances. So why not, you know, take them when the goalie's got to stand his line? And you know, there is a lot of pressure on penalty takers and not so much on goalkeepers because they're not expected to save them. But to be fair to them, in recent years they've become very adept at saving them. They now look at videos and the run-ups and techniques, and a lot of them move early, which is they're quite right in doing, because it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, to save a penalty. But I've always fancied my chances. I go up, pick a corner and strike them away, and over the years I've managed to score more than I've missed, so reasonably successful.
So Les Fridge comes off his line just to add to the delay for John Robertson. Robertson against Fridge. 1-0 to Hearts. It's been a long time coming. We're midway through the second half, and the breakthrough at last for Hearts. There was an excellent penalty this from Robertson. Fridge guessed wrong. That was hit with power and accuracy. Robertson looking for the winner. Here's John Robertson. 2-1 to Hearts.
John Robertson has a chance to score his 27th goal of the season. Robertson against Money. It's 1-0 for Hearts.
First time I was really convinced that John was going to make it absolutely at the top level was when Hearts were still in the first division. That's not the Premier Division, but the first division, the league below. And it was a very unglamorous match, but an important one for the club at Boghead, the aptly named Boghead, where Dumbarton play. And that day, Hearts really needed to win that game to be sure of winning promotion. And John scored a hat-trick, and he scored one with his left foot, he scored one with his right, and he scored one with his head. And at the time, the international manager was at the match looking at John possibly as an under-21 candidate, And he spoke to me afterwards and he said, Hearts have got £1 million in the bank with that player. And that in fact was to prove the case, although John, after he'd gone to Newcastle, didn't work out for him, and he came back to Tynecastle, where his career has flourished again.
Despite the stomach injury that kept John out for most of the rest of the season after his return, he certainly did flourish against Hibs in April '89.
We gave our best out of Robbo against the Hibs, and at that time it was good. His scoring rate against them is something special. I don't think anybody will catch it, and it was always nice to beat the Hibs. I think it got to one stage that if we'd beat them again, we'd have got to keep them. So when you go back to these places at Easter Road and you've got the fans actually shouting abuse at you before the game starts, then that's when you really know that you are a thorn to them. And over the years, John Robertson has been magnificent against the Hibs.
Remarkably, John's made his reputation in many ways through the derby matches in Edinburgh. And I say ironically because as a youngster, John came through the ranks with a Dyna Hibs and ended up at Tynecastle nonetheless. And his scoring record against Hibs is remarkable, phenomenal. And yet, I still believe that John is one of the players in Edinburgh who has a good relationship with both sets of supporters.
John Cahoon now with the corner. Levine charging in, and a chance! John Robertson!
John showed what a single-minded young man he can be around about the time that the merging of the two clubs was an issue, when he spoke out quite directly and said no, that he didn't think that was right. And I think partly because of that, and partly just because he's such a good footballer, that you know, Hibs fans might not particularly like to see John playing against them, but they respect him, and that speaks volumes for the man.
It's sort of one of these situations where the press seized upon that. I was asked to go along on the Hands Off Hibs campaign. I was asked to go along to support the players' side, as in the fact that if the clubs did merge, it didn't matter if it's Hearts or Hibs or Dundee, Dundee United, Celtic, Rangers, that there would be a lot of the players would lose their jobs. I mean, you can only have, if both clubs merge, you can only have, again, a squad of maybe 20 first-team players, which meant right away that 20 players from the other team, or a mixture of both, would lose jobs. The youngsters would then, obviously, 20 youngsters would have to go as well. So I was asked along on that pretext to go along and support the players, but it was banded out of control. People said I was there to support Hibs and that the takeover shouldn't go through. I wasn't, never was involved in anything to do with me. That was to do with the higher regions of the clubs, so both clubs to sort out. I was there first and primarily to support the Hibs players, and I think if the shoe was on their foot, they would probably have done the same thing.
Helped on there, the header from Robertson! Hearts go ahead, 2 minutes into the second half. And the goal machine called John Robertson does it again. This time off the head of McGinley. Across to Robertson coming in. A powerful header through the hands of Gorham. Well, a double for John Robertson. And the perfect start to the second half for Hearts.
I think that the both clubs should have their own identities at the moment and should try and preserve the tradition. I'd like to see them both go in their own way.
Miller getting the touch to it. Robertson's in there. Robertson doing well. And a deflection, it's a goal for Hearts! And John Robertson cutting into the penalty area, flipping the ball forward and deflected into the net. Under pressure. Cahoon, the ball through to Porter, he's got Robertson in the middle.
At the end of the 88-89 season, doctors diagnosed a hernia. An operation followed, and John had to work hard at his fitness. Training though at Hearts is strict, routine and tough, but has never been a problem to someone as dedicated as John. And with the help of all those around him, he painstakingly fought his way back to a recovery.
I think playing, you're just involved with yourself. You know, what you eat, how you train, the wee things you do during the week at training. When you're a manager, you've got everybody's problems. You've got to make sure that everybody's getting the right training. In many ways, the individual maybe need a wee bit different training at some time.
If I'd analyse him as a player, I would say he's got a good touch. His sense is an opening. He's got quick feet. I think he's very sharp in the box. I think when there's an opportunity there and he's in that area, there's a high percentage of a chance that he's going to connect and put it on target. So coming into preparation comes into that as rest as well. So you've got to look at your league programme, your cup programme, your international duty for whatever players are in the squad, and take it from there. So it's as important to look at it from the player's point of view, where he has the opportunity to rest, and also when you have the opportunity to train him and maintain the fitness that you have achieved at the beginning of the season.
That was the things you learn about from these kind of guys. And Albert Don wanted the older professionals to look after the kids, bring them up and teach them very, very good habits. And to be fair, Joe Jordan has carried on in that respect. He's brought a totally fresh new impetus to Tynecastle. He's brought a lot of foreign coaching methods. It's a lot more ball work, but again immersed with the fact that you've really got to look after yourself, look after you eat, look after yourself, rest. And that's the main thing. I mean, these Italians go home and sleep in the afternoon and sleep at night and eat all the right things and train like Trojans on the training field. Like most other players, they tend to be keen sportsmen and other things. And I used to play a lot of snooker when I was younger, but now it's mainly the golf. There's nothing better than getting a good long walk out the way and playing away, and also that's the main way to relax. I don't even play as much golf now as I used to because my two young boys run about, but if I'm not playing the computer games with them, it's out on the golf course for me any day of the week. Well, family life is probably one of the most important parts of a footballer's routine. I mean, everything works around that. My wife, I'm lucky enough to have one of the wives that likes soccer. Unfortunately, she understands the offside rule, which can be a bit of a bone of contention sometimes. But yeah, I mean, Tracy puts up with a hell of a lot, and I'm sure there's a lot of soccer wives out there that do the same. Where they're the ones that've got to put up with their bad tempers and their moods when we get beat, or things aren't going well in training, or you're falling out with the manager, or you've been dropped. But you know, Tracy's been on the end of my short temper many a time, and how she's put up with it half the time I'll never know. She's got the patience of a saint. But she's there, and she can sometimes do the same though, you know, and bite back and say, well, look, you're going to stop feeling sorry for yourself. You've got to get your act together and get on with it, and it's shown through that way. And obviously the two boys are great. Mark, who's come up for 5 now, has just really got into football. He goes down and watches the matches. He's still prone to falling asleep halfway through them, but again, he's beginning to realise now that his dad does play football. Ultimately, I hope it doesn't, you know, affect them in school in any way, and they can go on with their childhood and be as carefree as I've had.
In 1992, Heart of Midlothian Football Club awarded John a testimonial game, and it was with tremendous pride that he walked onto the pitch, accompanied by his sons Mark and Liam and their cousin Michael.
When I was a schoolboy, like everybody else, I had my favourite team, and I really wanted to play for Liverpool. I mean, the Douglases, the Sounnesses, the Keegans, I remember the Toshaks as well, Steve Highway, all these players, Emlyn Hughes, great players, and I think because they were the team of really the 70s and early 80s, that was who really wanted to play for.
It was fitting that on the night, the opposition should be Newcastle United.
They're a bit young to be playing, these lads, aren't they?
John's boyhood hero, manager Kevin Keegan, was delighted to have his team travel to Tynecastle.
I think John Robertson is without doubt one of the players I admire in Scotland. I suppose the affinity I've got with him is that we're both small, and yet we both manage to play where the big guys play. You know, when you play up front, everyone thinks you've got to be a big guy with a tremendous physique, but John Robertson proved that wrong, hasn't he? And I think that's to his tremendous credit. His goal tally is incredible. And the other affinity I've got with him, of course, I'm manager of Newcastle United, and John came down there. And to this day, people say he never really had a chance there. He didn't get a goal early, which every player needs. And I thought he would be a tremendous success, not only with the goal-scoring stakes, but also with the fans down there. But Newcastle's bad luck was Hearts' good luck. He's back here, he's back home, and this is home to him. And if any player deserves a testimonial, testimonials were invented for players like him, who've been very, very loyal, started through the ranks at a club, and seen it all the way through. I think he's a tremendous credit to football, and he's one of the little men in terms of looking at him, but he's one of the big men in terms of what he's achieved.
John was and is a very, very talented football player, and will score goals definitely in any company that ever plays him.
John Robertson is one of the all-time great penalty box players, and when he's switched on, there's no one better at what he does.
He has to win. He's dedicated to football. I mean, football's his whole life.
He loves his football, there's no question about that. I think that comes across. He'd talk about it all day. And I think the pinnacle of any player is to play for their country.
John is one of the finest players ever to pull on a Hearts jersey. Along with Conn, Bald, Wardour and other stars of the past, Robertson's name will echo through the corridors of the club for a long time to come, hailed as one of the greatest footballers ever to have played for Heart of Midlothian.
John Robertson is one of the few players of the modern era that if you were picking a select of Hearts greats out of the history books, if you could go in a time machine and travel backwards and forwards and pick the greatest Hearts team of all time, then John Robertson would be in that squad. There is no doubt about that. He is one of the very best in the entire history of the club.
Congested area, indeed it is. It's in. It's the equaliser. Brilliantly by Robertson. A minute of injury time gone, and one of the best strikers in the game, young John Robertson, equalises the score superbly.
John's goal-scoring record has been truly remarkable, having passed Alfie Conn's 121 league goal tally in the 1989-90 season. Next in line is that of Hearts' most famous player of them all, Willie Bald, who netted 183. But most of all, the one record he would like to beat is that of Jimmy Wardour, Hearts' all-time leading scorer, with 206 goals to his credit.
I've known John for the best part of 10 years. He's, without question, one of the great Hearts players, and that will stand the test of time. He's a very nice person. He does a lot of nice things for a lot of people outside of football, and he's a credit to himself and to the club.
The chairman and John Robertson have an interesting relationship over a period of 10 years. But what I can't deny, and I must admit quite seriously, is his contribution as a goal scorer. Pound for pound, as a penalty box player, has been exceptional. And I would also say that if he'd been with a bigger club in Scotland, he would have played a lot more times for Scotland.
Robertson was one of 8 internationalists playing for Hearts during the 91-92 season. He is without question acknowledged as one of Scotland's finest and most respected goal scorers.
Every goal gives you satisfaction. You get a buzz from every goal you score. And as I say, while there are some more memorable ones than others, you know, you get the same feeling of joy and pride and elation from scoring each goal. And people have said that I seem to, you know, really enjoy celebrating goals. And it's not through any malice to the opposition or the goalkeepers or the fans. It's just that, to me, that is the ultimate thing in football, is sticking the ball in the back of the net.